Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, From Video Usage to Engagement to Impact, Charging Ahead, which is sponsored by Alexander Street. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. Along the right-hand side, you will see a Q&A panel and a chat panel. If you don't, you can click the buttons labeled Chat and Q&A in the upper right corner of the screen to activate the panels. Please use the Q&A panel to submit questions to our speakers. At the end of the presentation, they will take a few minutes to answer your questions, so please do send them in throughout. If you experience any technical issues, please use the chat panel to let me know, and I'll troubleshoot the issue with you privately. Today, we're using the hashtag ACRLChoiceWebinars during the event. So if you have another screen handy, shout out to us. We're at choice_reviews on Twitter. Also note that we're recording today's program, and everyone who registered will receive a follow-up email with a link to the archived version. Our presenters today are David Parker. He's the Senior Vice President of Editorial and Licensing. Kathleen McClellan, who is the Senior Product Manager at Alexander Street, a ProQuest company, and Pete Ciaffetti, who is the Vice President of Product Development at Alexander Street, a ProQuest company. And with that, we're ready to get started, so over to you, David.
Thank you, Mark. And I want to say thank you to everybody for being on the line today. I think the simplest way to think about each of us that are on the call today, my role as VP of Video Distribution and Licensing is really to set the course and develop the strategy for where we're going to take our video distribution, video products, and then platform and technology support in support of those video products. Pete is our platform guy. Pete is the real expert on where we take the platform, what we provide in terms of data analytics and support of content on the platform, and then implementation. And Kathleen is our head of marketing, our head of communication, our head of sales. She's the one who really presents the external face on what we do to all of you out there in the library and librarianship world. So I just wanted to give you that context. Many of you were with us back in the fall, and we presented to you at that time on some planning we were doing after a good long period of thinking about where we wanted to go in providing measured impact measures, engagement measures, beyond simply providing counter-compliant usage statistics. And during that meeting in October, we spent some time talking with you about how we were viewing user engagement in the video space. For example, was a single view really a single view, or was that 2,000 students watching it in a large auditorium? We talked about how and what we can measure, and there's actually quite a bit. You'll see some of that in our preview of our new admin portal. And then we talked about how all of this leads to insights on impact, and that's really where the rubber hits the road for librarians. You need to be able to take this data back to administration to explain why you invest in video, how it delivers on improved learning and improved teaching outcomes, and then how we can develop all of this in the future. And at the end of that presentation, we promised that we would update you on our progress. And, you know, here we are about 5 months later, and we're going to update you today. So I wanted to double back to an article I wrote a couple of years ago in the Against the Grain magazine for the Charleston conference. And it really was the impetus for all of this. We were seeing increasingly that conversations about return on investment or efficacy of video products was being hyper-focused or laser-focused around cost per use. And increasingly, we wondered if that was, really the sum total of the conversation or the right measures to really balance out the view on whether a particular video product was returning meaningfully for the library. And so I wrote this article and I said, really, there must be much more to measuring ROI than just cost per use. And many of my columns over the past 3-4 years of writing for Against the Grain have elicited next to no response. But this one generated a tremendous amount of feedback, a lot of requests from librarians saying to me, well, great, so what are you all going to do at Alexander Street? And that led to many, many conversations about really moving the ball forward in terms of capturing not just cost per use, not just engagement, and by engagement we mean what sort of a device was used, what time of day did a person engage with the content, but also impact. How did we change lives? How did we improve the learning process? How did we make a faculty member much more effective? So at the end of that presentation in October, we had a polling question for you, and we said, what metrics do you wish you had to gauge engagement and impact with video? And a whole lot of stuff came back from you. But the real critical pieces that we sought to address from your feedback are really summed up here. Who is viewing? How much of the film did they watch? What portion of that film might have been assigned inside of a learning management system? Why did a faculty member or a student viewer select that film? Why did they watch it? And was it useful? Did they get what they needed out of seeing it? What was the efficacy of that film, of that viewing? So, the big reveal. We'd like to share with you now everything that we took on board from the feedback you offered us, the larger conversations we've had internally, many, many focus groups, and many conversations with librarians in creating our new admin portal. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thanks, David, and thanks again to all of you for being here today. So David talked about kind of the past and where we were coming from. I get to share with you the current world that we're in, and it's super exciting. And sometimes I get a little geeked out about this because it's so exciting and what we've accomplished so far. So I hope you bear with me with my excitement. But if everyone is able to see my page, what I'm showing you is a look into our admin portal. The first thing to notice is that it is now with the adminportal.alexanderstreet.com, a single sign-on access to all of your statistics within Alexander Street. And we've made everything really easily accessible for you. So now instead of going to different URLs and looking all over the place, we have everything in one nice place for you here over on the side. So you can manage your collections, look at your MARC records, and pull those as needed. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Go into the statistics, which David talked about, and also access our media hosting site where you can upload films and other media to your patrons, as well as a resource center for training and marketing materials to increase usage of the products that you purchase and subscribe to from us. So with that, I'm going to go into the My Collections part. So one thing, this account that I'm showing right now doesn't have access to the PDA, but I want to show you guys how you can manage a PDA account through our admin portal now. So within the PDA tab over on the right, over on the left, which would be in the menu button, you could select the PDA sorry, my mouth isn't working today, and see right there in front of you everything that you need to know about your PDA account, whether you have a cap and a budget or a deposit account, how much is in there, how much has been spent, what you have remaining, as well as when the PDA account started, when playback statistics were started to be calculated. You're able to search by title and organize things how you want, either by playback count, alphabetically by title, or however you want to sort here. A couple of things to notice is that you can see all the titles. Once a PDA a purchase is triggered after the 4th view, after 30 seconds, it is automatically set to a 1-year subscription, but here we do allow you to upgrade to either a 3-year or perpetual purchase if you would like, and if the title does have those rights available. So you have control over that. You're able to see the number of playbacks right away. And another thing that I like to make sure that people know, because we know that a lot of you have some of our products in different collections as well as PDA, we make sure that nothing is triggered in PDA if you've already purchased it. So here, the gift is another example of a purchase outside of PDA. So you know that the number of playbacks that's happened, how long those playbacks were, but you're not getting triggered for it. And we bring that to your attention too, so you don't have to worry about it. Our system's really smart, thanks to Pete, and allows us to do that. So that's our PDA world. And then within our collection world, you're now able to see all the collections that you have. You can sort it by expiration date, by a specific collection, disciplines, or purchase types. And within there, you're able to look and control the content at your own pace. And what I mean by that is you are now able to suppress and restore individual titles at your request. So here, in a very simple click of the mouse, if I did not want my patrons to have access to this one title, I could go in, suppress it. I now know that I have this title because it's grayed out, but I've suppressed it for whatever reasons, and now the patrons don't have access to that. If I want to go back and return that, I can do that and restore it back up with just a click of the mouse. I'm able to do it in groups of 25, 75, or 50 or 75, or just title by title, depending on how I want to control the content and how it goes out. So managing your collections is now easy within the click of a mouse. I'm also going to go into our MARC records. So we've increased the capabilities here. In the past, you have had, if you are familiar with our admin portal, you have had access to these two, the available records and the monthly changes, but now we have custom sets, which I'll go into in a little bit. But for those of you who aren't aware, here you're able to pull all the available records that you have access to through us, through this download, super easy, quick and fast. Here you can do it by month and the changes, the specific changes, where there are additions, updates, or deletions, and you're able to download those specifically. And then you're able to get in and create your own custom MARC sets. And what that means is you're able to really start and go in and filter either by a specific title or subject area, collection, discipline, or publisher, and create custom MARC sets pertinent to your need at that specific time. So here's an example of that. I can go in, again, search from a title, search by a specific date range, if I would like to do that, or within, let's see, I always like playing with different areas to see what happens. As you can see, it's churning, so we have access in this collection to 97,000 MARC records. As we start narrowing down our list to diversity, we are down to 3,400 records. And let's say in diversity, I want to look at American film and see what MARC records I have available here. Here you'll notice that you have 2 that are available according to the criteria that I chose. I can download a specific title, or I can download all of them here or there. So we've made it really easy and hopefully allowing you guys to really pick and choose the MARC records and the data that you're needing in that realm. I'll move on to the world of statistics. And I'm going to get into some instances here. Pete is going to go into and dive in a little bit deeper into the curated views. But what you find here is our counter 4, which we've had before. Again, everything is available in one place for you. Our user engagement and impact statistics here. And then the legacy statistics for everything not on the search.alexanderstreet.com platform. So I'm going to dig into the fun stuff, which is the engagement and impact statistics. And as you're going to be able to see, we've created a very nice, visually friendly dashboard for you. So up front, right away, you're able to see page views and playbacks by certain times. You can see here it pops up with a specific date. You can look by subject area and where the most usages are. Collections, the same, and you can always dig in further. And then we have things at a glance, your top viewed titles, your top referring URLs, top publishers, transcripts, sample content viewed, which I'll go into in a little bit, clips and playlists, as well as whether people are viewing things on or off campus. So the nice thing about this is here are your top 5 in all of those categories, but you can always dig in for more. This little arrow at the bottom right-hand side of all the boxes allows you to dig in. So I'm going to dig into the top viewed titles. And as you go in here, you're going to see that the default automatically goes to the paid content. So this is what you've either purchased or subscribed to through us. Here you're able to divvy it down by title, subject area, publisher, or collection, and really see how people are using things. Now, I also like to show within a specific title how granular we go by showing the specifics of a specific title and on the day how many playbacks have happened. So if you'd like to get granular, we are happy to support you there. If not, and I know some people don't want to go that far, you can always look at it from the bigger picture. I think there's much appreciation to the fact that I can look via publishers and collections to really see where my usage is happening. Now, one thing I want to point out is this sample preview content. And what I mean by that is the search.alexanderstreet.com website is searchable by Google, which means that your patrons can go and find stuff and search for stuff not within your realm, but outside of your realm, and find us. So that allows you to see how your patrons are searching for things and what content might be of most interest to them. So it's content that you haven't purchased, but you're going to be able to see if they're interested. So again, you can focus it by title, subject area, publisher, or collection. I love this root hog or die. I really need to watch this video because I do not know what it is, but it looks very interesting. But it allows you to go in and say, okay, what publisher is this? It looks like there's a strong emphasis in DER, which is an anthropology publisher, and you're able to go in and see by subject area what is the most interest there. So you're able to see your purchases as well as those that are not not purchased by you, but maybe should be in the future, just from your patrons' engagement with the material. So moving forward, we also have the engagement. So this is the super fun stuff. In here, you are able to see what has been cited, shared. Our platform does have mobile playback opportunities, so professors can forward links to mobile phones for the students, and they can watch on the go. Whether people are using playlists or clips or embeds, curated views, and extracted content. So this is all here for you to dig in as needed. But what I'm going to show you today is what David talked about, is going into the impact and where that data is coming from us, as well as how it can help support you guys in the data that you're being asked for. So what we mean by use cases is how students and or professors are using the material. So are they being shown in class, assigned a view? Is it being used for research or entertainment, some kind of training, or other? And so what we've done in our videos is right now we're testing it out at the 2-minute mark, but we are seeing what's going to be the best place to put these questions. But right now at the 2-minute mark, you are going to be asked, how are you using this? And those are the questions that pop up, shown in class, assigned a view. And as patrons answer those questions, these are now brought into your admin portal, so you're able to see how certain videos are being used. The same also goes for our rated videos. So after they're asked how it's being used, we are asking them, what do you think? Was it valuable to you? And just like any other rating, like on Netflix or YouTube, we have a 5-star rating. Students and professors can go in and say, this is great, this wasn't so great. And then you are able to see, as people rated them, what videos go into which categories to support, again, future purchase or, you know, just further data into how students and patrons are using things. And then finally, I want to show you really quickly the Patron Reports. Here's a nice overview of the browsers that are being used, the devices that are being used, the operating systems, whether people are on and off campus. Again, the top referring URLs, which is that outside sample content where people are coming from, what time of day and the time of week. So we hope to kind of bring all this data together for you in one place, easy to find, easy to see, and have you prepared for any kind of reports or requests that are being given to you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to go back over to the PowerPoint. And I'm hoping that everyone is able to see this screen again. And now we have a question for you at this point. And Mark, I'll let you throw the polling question out to everyone.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. So the question that we've got here today is, of the features you saw during the demo, what was the most important one to you? And you should see a poll question on the right-hand side of your screen. If you could take a moment and indicate which of those features was the most important to you, I'd appreciate that. And then we also have the fill in the blank that may help, I imagine, with further development or whatnot. Was there anything that you didn't see that you wanted to see? And if so, what would that be? So we'll give you just a moment more to answer that question, those two questions really. All right. We're still getting in just a few more answers here, so I'll give you a second to finish inputting your answers, and then we'll close the poll and we'll have a look at the results. All right, so we should be wrapping up the poll question there, and should be able to see along the right-hand side what the various responses were. It looks like the engagement stats are sort of soaring ahead of the other features, which does not surprise me. And we've got plenty of additional features, it looks like, that people would be interested in. So, Kathleen, I'll turn the floor over to you, and we'll keep moving through the presentation, if that's all right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
All right. So I think I'm going to hand everything over to Pete now to continue the conversation.
Great, thanks Kathleen, and thank you everyone else. Great to be back, actually talking about this again after the October presentation. We launched the site that Kathleen showed you in January, so we've had a chance to accumulate about 3 months of data and 3 months of feedback, and so I'm going to talk about some of that feedback and what people found most interesting and ask most of the questions about. So one of the things I'm going to start with is, why are we measuring learning outcomes? Because that's going to steer us in a conversation in a direction that compares it to some of the other things going on out there, like altmetrics. I'm going to focus on 2 parts of the data that I think, generate the most questions and interest, but also probably worth explaining the most. And that's how to measure sort of channel impact on discovery. And then one of the channels that we're going to do a deep dive on is this notion of a curated view. So next slide, please. So I bring in some quotes from some leading educators over time. This is not going to surprise anyone on this webinar. I think that there's a long-standing and increasingly urgent need for the academic institutions to demonstrate positive learning outcomes. And so our primary motivation really in some of these statistics is to support that with data. And so if you're in a position where you want to sort of see how your actions are helping along those objectives, you're providing users access to information, how are they using that? And is that supporting your objectives here? So you'll see in some of the slides, I'm going to compare what we're doing with altmetrics. And if you've been to any of the sort of scholarly conferences like SSP or ERNL, you'll see there's a lot of talk about altmetrics. And I believe that that has a slightly different objective than the one we have set out for ourselves. It seems to be more based on the needs of the research funders, the researchers themselves, and other stakeholders wanting to see more of a return on the society's investment on research funding. But our products are more positioned to help with the teaching and learning. And so when we looked at providing deeper metrics beyond counter, we did look at altmetrics, and I wasn't entirely sure myself that the kind of measurements that they were putting forth were going to give that kind of insight into the impact on teaching and learning. So while there's some concepts that I think you'll see that overlap, there are some new angles that we've had to investigate to see if this is going to help with those inquiries. Next slide, please. So if you've seen a kind of media report 1, you'll see that it aggregates playbacks by collection and month. And that's very helpful, especially when you've got lots of collections across a lot of different providers, and you want to aggregate your data and kind of give a sort of institution-wide view of all of the usage of all your collections. But it's the nature of multimedia instructional materials to be more interactive. So you can see here that users, besides viewing a video, they can also using features of the system. And many of the systems that offer video have something like this. Maybe not all of them, but many of them. So you can share links to the video. You can create annotations in the form of a clip. You can add the citation to the video to some citation management system. You can embed the video on another page like a LibGuide or maybe a learning management system. You saw some of the things that Kathleen showed about rating and reviewing the video. We have related items, associated materials. I'll also show you in a slide coming up that we've introduced other types of interaction where we're layering on top of the video questions about the video that sort of act as interactive Q&As that can be, whose answers can be accumulated and reported on. We can also know the paths that the users are taking to get to the video. So we heard from our advisors and the early customers of the system that knowing how users get to the video is very important to you, because you're investing in loading those MARC records into your catalogs, turning on discovery systems, or investing in LibGuides. So it's possible for us to report back to you how those efforts are actually succeeding and what titles are being found in those systems. A lot of site managers view this kind of discovery problem as a search engine optimization. And that does make sense, from the sense of, if you're trying to find reach users who are using Google as their starting point, SEO is very important. But when you talk about all these different channels, SEO doesn't by itself cover it all. So we have to think of feedback mechanisms to you that show you how can we you know, if you take on a new program that maybe puts some more effort into LibGuides or something, does that effort pay back in increased usage? So in the next slide, I'm going to do a little comparison to altmetrics, just to kind of show you what we're doing and how it might be a little different from that. So in altmetrics, these are a series of measures that measure the attention that a given article is receiving, largely in the social media sites, and how many link backs to the article there might be. So if somebody tweets a DOI or PubMed link back to an article, these altmetrics aggregators are able to notice that happening across all of the users of you know, sites like Twitter and Facebook, and then sum that activity up and accumulate it by title. So I look at that type of report and I think of it as sort of like an outside looking in measurement. And that's really what they're trying to do. They're trying to measure attention. And their perspective is if this article is having an impact on society, then society would be talking about it and in the way they use social media. But what I do notice when we looked at it as a mechanism for providing the kind of feedback we wanted, they didn't really consider the different types of interaction that were possible when using the items. So it's kind of, you know, creating clips or doing embeds or using the interactive capabilities of the video aren't really among the measures that altmetrics are providing. So you can consider them alternative metrics from this perspective that they're different from Counter, but they're also different from these more sort of widely known altmetrics that are happening in the journal space. And then I did look at what they were doing. You know, it's also, for the most part, seemed to be confined to scientific, technical, and medical journals. And some of that has to do with the fact that altmetrics, in order to be aggregated at the title level, have to be supported by things like standard identifiers. And the STM world tends to have that. But when you get outside the STM realm and into things like video and to other things like archives, which we do a lot of work on, there tends to be less of that type of standard identifier that you can use. So even if you tweet about some of our videos, it may not show up in these altmetric aggregations. And they're also, I think, you know, for the most part, confined to what's revealed by these social media APIs. So there's a lot of activity that some of these journal articles might be generating, but if you can't see it through these social media APIs, then it's sort of a hidden type of interaction. So on the next slide, what I'm showing you is from the Altmetrics Top 100 for 2015, and they have there in that for each article that hit the Top 100, you can pull up any article and see what they aggregated for what they call attention, what kind of attention, an attention score that this article received. So this is an article from Nature, and you see that it got a lot of attention, 2,200 tweets and various other types of attention. But it's not, you'll notice, counting the institutional avenues to the article. So there's no mention here of how many users came from the catalog or a discovery system. So if you put this Nature article in front of your user through one of those systems, and then they tweeted about it, you don't know how they found this article, whether it was through your help or through some other means. There is one mention of Wikipedia. Somebody at Wikipedia decided to put a link back to this article, and so there are 4 different pages there. So there you got to kind of see some of the ways that users might discover the system, discover this article. So there's 2 important points here that I want to talk about because there are some overlaps. One is this notion of channel. So what I mean by channel is what are the sites that are possible to use as a discovery mechanism for this article. And so while the social media APIs that Altmetrics use to accumulate these numbers say what tweets, for example, existed for this article, what they don't know, and what is really only knowable by the Nature site itself, is how many users use that tweet to get back to the article. So that's something that we and any other publishing platform could start to aggregate, is by different types of sources, how many linkbacks activity are we actually getting. And the other notion that I want to bring out that sort of shows up in this report here is this notion of curation. And what I mean by curation and how it's distinguished from the regular types of channels of discovery is that this is really the activity of people, bloggers, posters, tweeters, retweeters. Some of them may be bots, but let's ignore those for now. But really, this is largely the activity of humans who found this article interesting and decided to talk about it. And so I distinguish that from the kind of discovery that you see in Google, because a lot of that discovery is achieved, en masse. We are able to create sitemaps to all of our content, and Google crawls that all. And so through one simple set of actions that we've done and others like us have done, we make our stuff discoverable. But it's really hard to tell when we provide links to the Google sitemap to hundreds of thousands of items, millions of items in some cases, which of those are actually the ones that are getting the most action. It's the actions of humans that I think start to reveal where the real impact is happening. So in the next slide, you'll see that we want to start doing that. So again, to repeat, measuring channel impact is this idea where you're going to group the referring URL. So if you're familiar with how web URLs work, whenever somebody clicks on a link to something, the receiving system knows what the referring site is. And so we can accumulate that. And if you have turned on Google Analytics for your sites, the sites that you manage, then you'll find that it's very easy to kind of get reports out of a system like that to say, what are the top referring sites to my site? And it gives you a chance of where users come from. What you'll find in a lot of those referring URL reports is that URLs are all over the place. They have different levels of depth that they start from, different sites that they start from, different parameters on the URL. And so it's kind of hard to get a kind of bird's eye view of where people are coming from with all the different referring URLs that you get. So Google Analytics has, and our site now has, this idea of channels where you can group URLs that fall into similar categories into one channel and give that channel a name. It's been on Google Analytics for a while, and I can provide people pointers if you're not familiar with this feature. It's listed as a beta feature in Google Analytics, although it's been there forever, as long as I can remember. And they can, and we can, report on the different sources of traffic to your material. So I'm going to give you, in the next slide, a basic view of what we mean by a channel report. Here you'll see that if we were to group these different referring URLs into categories, you'll see that there's a lot of activity coming from this site from a discovery system. They've also invested in and seem to get a lot of traction from this menu system that they've developed that's kind of pretty comprehensive, listing all of the collections that they provide access to in different ways by title and by subject, et cetera. And users seem to be finding that helpful. There's also, obviously, the catalog. They've loaded mark records and are getting a lot of sessions and page views from that. And they put some investment into libguides, and they get some traction there. So it's actually, and this is real data from one of our customers. They've obviously invested in a lot of different channels to provide access to the content and getting a lot of traction from many of them. And maybe they'll see that they're getting also some traction from their learning management system, but maybe not as much as they want. So this might be an indication that are people using our LMS enough to find the content that's possible. So I'll stop there. I'm going to change topics slightly, but in the next slide, what I want to talk about, and Kathleen also touched on this when she was showing you the stats, is that we've started to explore doing video interaction. So we have many very popular videos, but one of them that we chose in our counseling and therapy collection was to add a series of questions, and these were questions that we had input from our advisors on and our editorial people who put this product together, very familiar with the kind of questions that these videos are designed to answer. And so we put a series of screens that pop up at different junctures in this video. Not every viewer of the video sees this. You go to a special page where once you get to the video on that page, the layered questions are also part of that page. And as you interact with the video, you come to the points where the questions are asked, and you get to answer them and submit your questions. And in the next slide, you'll see how we get to aggregate that. So Kathleen talked about at the 2-minute point, we asked you, why did you use this video? And we've got 6 questions plus, including the other category. And then we allow the user to rate the video, and we accumulate stats on that. And as we get more into this video interactivity, we want to be able to share the titles that are getting most of that interaction. So that's just another thing that's sort of, I think, very natural for a video platform to offer. There's ways you can interact with text material too, in terms of commentary and things like that, and even other media like we have in our image viewer. We have the ability to do annotations on that as well and share those annotations. So there's plenty of ways, even in a non-video site, for it to be interactive and to count those interactions beyond the view. But video and audio that we have a lot of seems to be sort of very natural, that users are expecting that in their experience. So in the final 2 or 3 slides, I want to get into what we mean by the curated view. So the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we grouped the referring URLs into different channels, and the different channels range from catalogs to discovery systems to guides and such. But there's a whole lot of action that we get from individuals who have decided to take our permalinks or our embed codes and put them into another page. And we can tell when the user arrives at our site whether that was the kind of URL they followed. Now, there is a little bit of analysis that goes into this. We can't, I would say with about 90–95% accuracy, we can tell that that permalink was not the kind of link that we make available to Google because of the way the link was stored and the kind of site it came from. In another case, we know exactly that it's not coming from Google or a catalog because, for example, an embed, which you often find in a learning management system, is a special set of codes that the user puts into the page. And so when you're arriving at our site through an embed, we know that it's an embed, and we can tell what page it's embedded in. So through the combination of knowing it's an embed and knowing the referring URL, we can tell that the way that the user arrives at this video is through what I call a curated view, human activity. And so this is also live data accumulated over the last 3 months from one of our customers. And I'm actually blown away at how much curated views this site is getting in just 3 months and the titles that they're getting it from. And so this is saying that thousands of views are coming to our site from one customer for a handful of titles that are really getting a lot of traction in their internet. You're just not going to see this inside of a regular sort of counter 4 report, which is just counting views. Certainly those views are important, and I don't want to discount them, because certainly if you're finding things through catalogs or through our own site, that tells us that those systems are being effective. But this is sort of taking it to the next level. When users find something and they interact with it, they take that embed code and they do something else with it. And we saw, if you go back to the question that David threw out in the introductory slide, the feedback that we got when we first shared this concept, we got feedback that said users wanted to know, for example, what role was the person playing who did this activity? Was this faculty engagement or is this user engagement? And that's something that we're not capturing yet at the moment, but we've heard that feedback. And a lot of what we're asking and why we're doing this webinar is to get into this set of questions. And so I want to, maybe we can go to the next slide, Kathleen, and I'll just sum up what our curated view is. Kathleen, next slide, please. There we go. So why are they interesting? So for me, it indicates an investment on the behalf of the person promoting the link or embed. So there's some level, they have some motivation beyond their own use, perhaps, for doing that. Unlike altmetrics, we're counting the return here. So while we do allow users to use our share feature, and through that share feature, they can make a Facebook post very simply, or do a tweet, or any of the ways that sharing is allowed through that particular feature. And that might tell, an altmetric system might be able to tell how often that happened, how many times this particular URL show up inside Facebook. But where we're counting on the way back is how many people saw that Facebook post and then actually used it to get to the video. So it's a little bit like regular discovery, except that it's user or faculty originated. So when you look at this particular measure and the other one with the channel report, I think it's providing some of the more revealing, statistics about the impact of these materials. The work that you're doing as administrators of these materials, putting things like discovery systems in front of users, and the work that faculty is doing, putting them on things like learning management systems, and the work that users are doing themselves to promote the material. So I'll wrap it up there. I think we have one more poll question that comes after this, where of the different types of interaction that we're offering in our platform, we're interested in finding out, which of these are most interesting to you to see as part of ongoing reports, because we're at a phase of this process. If you compare this activity and altmetrics in general, we're not yet at the standardization level. Counter 4 only got to where it was because before Counter 4, there were a lot of individual publishing platforms. Customers said usage was important. We all put together usage reporting systems, but in the cowboy days, we all had to log into these systems and hold these reports down, and we counted things in different ways. What was a view in one system doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as a view in another. Counter fortunately came along and standardized all that and says, we're going to define what a view is, and not only that, we're going to define on how you report it so that I can aggregate all that data across all of my portfolio. We're obviously not there at this point with altmetrics, and I don't think we should be there. We should let, I think, this kind of conversation evolve to the point to find out what's important and then let that inform what needs to be standardized. So we're going to use this webinar here to kind of get a peek at what may be important to you, and maybe some of the Q&A can get into that. So I'll let Mark take over in terms of run this poll question, and then I think our presentation will be largely wrapped up. We can come back to the Q&A.
Great, thank you, Pete. So folks will see that we do have the poll question open up on the right-hand side. We're getting plenty of responses, but if you do have the opportunity to, if you notice it there, please feel free to go ahead and let us know what you think. And I think we've got a few questions in the hopper already. I would also encourage you, if you have not yet, if you do have some questions, please feel free to drop those into the Q&A box on the right-hand side and send them in. We've got a few questions here, I think. Let me look through them for a moment. We've got a question. We've got a few comments. One from Mo that says, Alexander Street may be leading the pack by implementing this feature. I'm always curious to know how online films are being used by patrons. Thanks for the feedback there, Mo. We've got another question here from Jamie, who says, for MARC records, do you have a MARC edit date? Are these when the item is added to the database? And then Jamie goes on and says, I noticed when I did a search the other day, I already had some of the records when I did a search for those added in the last 3 months. So what is the date? What does the 3-month date refer to, or the date that the MARC record is added? What is that? Is that the date that is added to the system, or is there some other date that's being used there?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and make an educated guess here. When we add a title to the platform, that will be arriving on a certain day or week of the month or something. And we have, over the past year, we've introduced a policy of releasing video within 72 hours of getting the rights to publish it. So we do have a fairly ongoing and vigorous update schedule for our video. Now, the MARC records for that, we have, we try to catch up with all that video with the MARC, support everything with the MARC record, and we get about, I think, 500 or so MARC records added a month. And I believe the MARC edit date is the date the MARC record was created, not the date that the video was added to the platform. But what Jamie's observing is that you downloaded some MARC records, but you already had them in your database. So, obviously, Kathleen showed you there were different ways of adding MARC records through, full downloads or by collection and these custom sets. So I have to make an educated guess as to why one record might be in more than one set. It might have been edited multiple times, perhaps, would be one guess there.
That makes sense. We've got another question that I think came through while Kathleen was doing her presentation, and I don't know if you, Pete, would have the information on this, or if Kathleen might have this, but Deborah asked, can we determine the embeds by subject? And I think by that she means, can they associate the, and please feel free to clarify to send another note our way if this is not what you mean at all, Deborah, but can you tell which subject area the video?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if Kathleen, if you still have the site up and want to switch back to the presenter, but the answer is yes, basically yes, because now embeds we combine into this broader category that we call curated views. And when you, if we go to the engagement stats, I'll show you how this looks. So there they are. I think if we go, I thought we had a, like we do in some of the other reports, it might be in this summary report where we search by, allow you to have by titles by publisher and by subject. Maybe I guess we don't have that for the embeds. We do have all of the top embedded titles and then playbacks by subject, but not embeds by subject in this current set of reports. Well, let me tell you about these reports. These are largely reports that we've defined the rows and columns of and made it so that all you have to do is select, like Kathleen's doing here, an entry from a menu. The data behind this can and does keep track of all of the different rotations of this kind of information. So we do know the embeds by subject. We just haven't added a menu option to that. And part of when we designed the system, if you compare it to Google Analytics or some of these other more sophisticated data analysis tools where you can build your own reports, we wanted to balance ease of use, where all you have to do is pick a report, with flexibility, where you can define your own rotations and your own rows and columns. So one of the questions maybe we can get behind this question is, would you invest in coming to a system like this where you could say, I want to see embeds by subject, and make that a kind of build your own report feature of the system? I think we hesitated to go there because from our experience, my experience anyways, before even coming to this company, I had built statistics systems for other publishers, and this is in the pre-Counter days, and pretty quickly we learned that librarians don't really want to come to a statistics site for one publisher at a time. This is a great way to kind of do a deep dive into one of your sources of information. And when you're leading the conversation on what's possible here, we have to put systems like this in front of you. But ultimately, I think we need to get to a point where we standardize this and we're pushing the data to you rather than you coming to it. But I think there's a number of people out there that want both. They want to be able to come and do these deep dives and design custom reports. And a lot of people that just want to have it aggregated for them and pushed to them in a standard way. So I guess the short answer is we haven't provided, but could provide curated or embeds by subject. And it boils down to whether that's interesting to have as a predefined report or to make a report something you can define yourself.
Great, thank you, Pete. We've got another question here from Karen that says, is the new stats portal for Counter 4 currently available? I don't know if you have any perspective on that or not, but I thought I would throw it out there.
Well, we've had Counter 4 for 4 years, yes. Now, what's new, I guess, is the single sign-on to this, so we can provide you access to the Counter 4 stats by signing into the admin portal and allowing us to get to it. It's actually hosted on an external site where you can define whether you want to download your DB1 or PR1 or MR1 reports. So that's available. There are some legacy Counter 3 reports you'll see on the legacy stats side on the right-hand side. So that's also been available for, I think, several years even before that.
Okay, great. And we've got another question here from Iowa State that says simply, can you clarify, can the metrics tell us the counts for when videos have been shared, annotated, embedded, etc.?
Yeah, and that's really what's going on in this sort of if you click on the summary, just that menu item, you can actually see at a glance all of the types of, not that summary, but on the engagement, just click that right there. Okay, and then you'll see, as you scroll down, we've got a little snapshot of each of the types of interactions, sort of in one eyeball. But then you can double click on any one of these to get the detail behind that. So this gives you can change the date range, or you can include or exclude certain characteristics of these reports. So they are interactive. And then this was, for example, the detail for extracted. What we mean by extracted, by the way, is that the system has the capability when you get to a video or any other type of title, you can print that, or if it's a printable item like a text item, or you can email it or save it to your computer. If you do any of those three actions, we call that an extraction, and then we count that as one type of engagement. And hover over the little I button on any one of these, and there's like next to each of these, there's a little I figure, and if we go to, for example, next to shared, what we mean by the I icon will tell you what we mean by that. Near the bottom of the screen. Sorry. There we go. Let's wait. So this will give you a kind of little 1 or 2 sentence explanation of what we mean by the title. We're going to, supplement that with white papers on this that tell you, in depth. Because if you look at what's going on with the altmetric standardization that NISO is doing, what NISO is doing, what I find interesting and very helpful, is that they're not so much at this point in the early days of altmetrics asking that the implementers choose the same definition for everything. But what they are asking the altmetrics providers and aggregators to do is to be transparent. They want to know what you're counting and how you're counting it. And that further, you'd be, if you were to be the site were to be audited and measured against, controlled activity, that the numbers that you're reporting are the numbers of user actions that actually happened. So both of those are very important to any system like that, that are transparent with the definitions and that the system is, accurate, obviously. That's very important.
All right, and we've got just a few more minutes here. I would suggest if you have any last-minute questions that you would like to drop into the Q&A box. I'll give you just a second or two to do that. And otherwise, I will say that we're really coming to the end of our time today. So thank you so much, David and Kathleen and Pete. As you probably know, this is Mark from ACRL and Choice. I just want to say thank you to each of you for walking us through this system today. It looks really great, and I think there's a lot of data here that we can use to justify the video usage that we're seeing. So thank you so much for this. And I'd just take a moment to remind each of our viewers today that we recorded the program, so please do be on the lookout for a follow-up email from ACRL and Choice with a link to the recording. And thank you to all of you who are on the line who have joined us today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you have an excellent afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.